the lesson.
Oh, yeah.
DJ Reflux.
How you doing, man?
Thanks heaps for coming through, bro.
Oh, man. Thank you for having me, man. It's been a minute.
Yeah, man. I think last time I would have seen you would have been at a gig probably like 5 years ago.
Yeah, it would have been like 4 or 5 or something. Probably always gig at the Gov, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I reckon something like that.
So I guess, I mean, what's been happening in the meantime? I know, congratulations, you got, 2 little ones.
Yeah, got another little baby. Yeah, not much, man, to be honest. Since kind of exiting, kind of the scene as such, I've just been keeping to myself pretty much. Just family life, man. Yeah.
Now, man, you were a pretty big influence on my DJing when I was coming up. I think I remember it was the DJ Green Lantern. There was a DJ Green Lantern
St.
gig.
Paul's?
Yeah. So that was at St. Paul's, and that was when he was at Eminem's DJ.
Yeah, yep.
And I just remember, like, I'd heard your name.
That's going back.
Yeah, man.
That's going back.
Yeah.
That's stretching my memory there. Yeah, radio. It was downstairs or something? Was it?
It was the first time I'd been in the venue, but
Yeah,
all I
right.
remember is like it was like, oh wow, Reflux is on the decks. You were actually on before me, which now that I know more about how set time rollouts work, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I actually remember watching you. This was the days of vinyl still. No Serato, and I just remember watching how you would go from left turntable to right turntable and pull out doubles, and you'd use both hands, simultaneously.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was just sort of scratching. I had one strong side.
Yeah, one strong side, yeah.
And that fully made me be like, oh, okay.
It's a good thing that DMC's kind of teach you, I guess, is like, I remember Kim to Zen was my big influence on the two-handed stuff. You know what I mean? Like, when you see that dude juggle, it would be like he's fluent in both hands and stuff. And you realize, you've got to get good with both hands if you're going to. And all it was back in the day for me was DMCs and ITF. That's all I wanted to do. And all I wanted to win was those, or, you know what I mean? At least be seen as competent, you know what I mean? The desire there was to win, but I didn't need to, own it all. You know what I mean? I just wanted to be able to go out there, do my thing. Because I kind of learned after a while as well that those competitions were always fraught with a bit of, a give and take. You might win some, you might lose some. So that type of thing,
So I guess, that was the first time I'd seen you perform.
Yeah, right.
But, you'd been doing your thing for years before that.
Yeah.
So I guess take us back to when you first got into DJing, how you got introduced to it, some of your influences, and then how that gradually, snowballed.
I mean, how I first got into it would have been Madcap, really. Madcap and Next. Pretty much in terms of DJing myself, all I was doing was sitting at home, really. You know what I mean? I was unemployed. Living with my parents. Had 2 decks, and I was just buying every bit of money I had. I just went to Central Station, and I'd just be buying records and buying records and buying records.
And Madcap was working.
Madcap was working there. Yeah, it was Nigel and Madcap working there.
So what year?
This would have been 98.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, 98, 99. 98, I think, was pretty much when I started buying up heaps. And Madcap just, because I was in there all the time. Like, I was in his face all the time, and I'd hand him mixtapes. And I'd be like, give him a couple mixtapes. And then one time he rang me back or whatever and said, hey, do you want to come in and play on 93.7? Which was degrees, 93.7 degrees in the shade. So it was Cura Mystics and Madcap and Jane, I think, was doing the show. And I was like, oh, because we used to listen to that show religiously. Yeah. That was the show, man. They were the shit. So, they invited me to come in and spin some records, and I'm like, far out, man. Blew my head, you know what I mean? I thought I was the luckiest dude ever. And so I went in there and, spun a little, half hour or something in there. And I remember meeting some of the dudes and, meeting Kuro and stuff. And I had been kind of going around to a few of the gigs and follow them around a little bit as well, and kind of getting my name in their face as such. And I wasn't too long before Madcap. I think it was first gig I actually played out was Pumpkinhead.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was Pumpkinhead upstairs at where was it now? I can't even remember now. When he first came over, and it was the first time I jumped up on decks and actually got to spin some records in a club situation as such. I was nervous as hell, man, but I really enjoyed it. That was pretty much my first foray into that, and it wasn't too long after that. Madcap kind of threw me the gig in terms of, hey, do you want to come and spin on radio for good type of thing? We're kind of, some people are moving on from the radio and changing the guard up and stuff. Next was, I think, moving and stuff like that. So, do you want to come in and spin records? And I was like, hell yeah, I'll take that gig. And then I did community radio then for, years and years and years after that. So I was with Madcap and that first, and then we kind of moved to Fresh, and then, it was all over the place.
Because after that, then it became the premium blend. Yeah.
So it was 93.7 degrees in the shade or whatever with Madcap, and then, they moved to Fresh as such. And then I ended up doing, a show with Kirk and Headlock. Eventually went back to 3D basically. So after the Fresh FM thing kind of died off.
So there was a transition from 3D to Fresh and then back to 3D.
Yeah, for myself at least. Yeah, because Madcap's show basically wound up and someone else took over that kind of time slot. So
yeah, wow. Now tell us, I guess, about as someone that had the hand in both of those shows. The show with Madcap was just a little bit before my time. I got to Adelaide in 98, and I didn't sort of catch on to locally what was going on till about 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
So by the time I caught on, it was the premium blend.
Yeah.
And we used to stay up, man, and listen to that shit.
Yeah.
And laugh our asses off because
it wasn't organised, man. It wasn't organised. We tried our best to bring, we did our best with the music. We really did. We tried to bring the freshest stuff we could, what I mean? And we had our hand on the pulse with all the records as well. So when things were dropping, we would try to litter it with the good shit as well as new stuff, and it's a bit of local as well, you know what I mean? Because local wasn't huge, you know what I mean? It was predominantly US stuff. So, you know what I mean? But our playlists were always big, but as you could tell, the organisation of the show was a bit haphazard at best.
Well, we used to tune in a lot, not only for the beats, because the beats were always hot, but for the banter,
the laughs.
Dude, to us, it sounded like you guys was just drunk in a studio.
We pretty much were
running them up.
Yeah.
There was no format.
Yeah.
I think it's do you guys even prepare your playlist beforehand?
No, I mean, back then, even in club gigs and stuff like that, which I find really weird. I see these DJs out there now, even, 5-6 years ago, even before that, having exactly curated sets, club set. I'm going to a set and I'm playing this after this after this after this, exactly how that. I never did that. When I played a club set, I would just be freestyling it. And there's my creative records. I select them before and hit the decks, and I'd just play what I felt at the time. And so some mixes sucked and some mixes were dope, and you try to remember the dope ones as such, and you kind of know where you're going. Obviously, you're not clueless, and you know what records are going to work, but it's kind of you just follow your tail to you just go in there and just freestyle it. It's kind of like the way I was brought up, I guess, into the scene, and the way Kim played as well. I played a lot of sets with Kim and a lot of the kind of touring, kind of lead up, support DJ slots. We did a lot of those and stuff like that. So a lot of shows like that. So kind of always just played how I felt at the time.
So what was the biggest difference for you in terms of the show with Madcap then when it became premium blend?
a bit hard to say. It's a bit blurry, to be honest. Once again, in my head, exactly that transition. Madcap was pretty organised. I've got to admit, he was pretty organised, and he was control of the realm. You know what I mean? It was kind of his show, and I'd be DJing, and there's some other, kind of banter going on and things like that. You know what I mean? And so he was on the mic most of the time, and he'd organised guest spots or anything like that. It was pretty much his show. And then when we went to the Premium Blend, it was a little bit more of a collaborative thing. You know what I mean? So, Kirk and Hetty and things like that doing things, it was a little bit of a different beast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that started to be more of the Aussie scene as well. So then it started to clear, because obviously it was a different kind of connections as well, with After Hours and everything like that, and Kirk being part of Pulling Strings and very much in touch with, the Aussie scene. Whenever anyone came through to do a show, we'd get him into, get him into freestyle and whatever else. And if no one was in town at that weekend, we'd just get local cats come in and fill the spots up. And, then it started to become more of a, I guess, influencing what we heard on the radio shows from OS, you know what I mean? Stretch and Babito and things like that. You'd hear these dudes coming in. And so we wanted to have a little bit more of that kind of feel. Yeah. I don't think it was intentional. We're not going to go out and do a show like them. We just did the show as such, you know what I mean? And we'd all just bring in new records that we'd got that week or stuff like that, and we'd all, compete over playing them. And it's fun times, man.
And really I remember like the raps, when we have ciphers now, they're very organized. Yeah. Dudes are like, they're sharp, they're ready to go. Yeah, man, it's, almost flawless, if not flawless. Yeah. But back then when I used to tune in, it didn't sound like that at all. Like first of all, now it's written. Yeah. Whereas in back then, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it definitely sounded like it was just. Nah, man, no, it wasn't written. Yeah, it was just all off the head.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever heard anything, you can do a quick little Google search, you'll find some stuff. And yeah, it was pretty wrong. We got booted off air a few times as well.
For real?
Yeah. Just from swearing too much on air, and it got pretty wrong in spots as well. So, 3D would go, you get a ban for a week. And we'd have to just play a CD the next week or something. It happened a few times, you know what I mean, where things got to be ruthless, or it was beer in the studio or something like that, because it literally was. We'd be drinking in there and stuff like that. Stuff you just can't do nowadays, man. You just can't do that, you know what I mean? And we got away with it. It was kind of cool, definitely led to a bit of a, it was a thing, Yeah. We had a good listenership though as well. It was good.
Yeah, man. I mean, we used to all tune in. I remember seeing photos and like the studio was all bombed up.
Oh yeah, totally.
It was everywhere.
Down the basement, 3D radio used to be out on North Adelaide somewhere. I can't remember, the Nelson Street or something, Stepney. It was in the basement of this house, and like the sound padding on the walls was just this kind of hessian cloth, and it was just bombed. And I mean, every inch of it bombed, and every week it got bombed more and more and more. And the roof, you name it, the whole lot got done. Yeah.
So that transition from it being Madcap show to Premium Blend would have been around early 2000s.
Thinking so.
And then
it would have been around 2000, I think.
And then around what time? Because I
99
noticed,
even.
Yeah. So.
Oh no, 2000. Yeah, around there. Yep.
And then so at what stage? Because I remember when in the peak of it all for me, from what I remember, is like you guys was always in there. And then after a while, I think maybe when the Funkoars, it started popping off a bit more and there was a bit more tours or whatever happening, then it was more just Kirk in there.
Yeah. Well, it started to become a bit of a, it's a long thing to keep going. You know what I mean? And the vibe kind of died between me and Hetty as well. And every week coming in with that kind of same, how can I say, you would understand this, doing a radio show every week for years. It gets tiring, you know what I mean? And so, it'd be every Thursday would be, I can't be effed, I'm not doing it this week. And, Kirk was the soldier, man. He would go in there and he would do his thing. That was his baby, you know what I mean? And props to Kirk for that, you know what I mean? When, we couldn't be stuffed, he would always hold that mantle and go in and do that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my first radio spin from memory was on that show.
Yeah.
But it would have been like probably around the time where you guys weren't going in so much.
Yeah, and we were getting in guests as well and stuff like that.
Yeah, I just remember I put out that
I do remember
mixtape
that,
and
yep.
he played it.
Because you were playing the dope records. You still do. But I'm saying, like, back then it was like, who is this dude? You know what I mean? He was playing all the records that we were playing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And of course, you hit the radar. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll get him in for sure.
Yeah, and I remember when he played a snippet of it and I didn't hear it, but someone told me, I was so excited. It meant the world to me because I was like, we tune in every fucking week for however
So this is the
years.
same feeling that I got when Madcat gave me a shot back in '93. You know what I mean? Because of that was I used to tune in. That was the vibe. That was the show. And so when you get a shot at that, your ego gets a boost and you hit the roof and you're like, yeah, let's do this.
That late 90s, early 2000 period.
Yep.
I'm guessing that's also where you were involved, like battling in DMCs and ITF.
Yeah. So my first DMC, I think SA DMC I did was '98. I think I got third from memory. Kim Zen was the guy to beat back then. I looked up to Next, but Next kind of had just stopped kind of competing then, and he was more into the judging type of thing and kind of bailed out. So it was Kim and someone and dudes like that were, at the top, that type of thing. I remember going to the 97 ITFs at the Royal, in which Kim did really well, and it was like Dexter and someone in things like that battling each other and stuff. That was pretty dope. That was one of the competitions, the biggest one that got me fully inspired. You know what I mean? Because it was like someone is like this local cat and he's taken it to the national dudes like Dexter. You know what I mean? I'm like, if the local dudes can do that, I can do this. And I was looking at their sets going, yeah, this is doable. You know what I mean? I want to let me in there. You know what I mean? So it was a while yet before I got enough skill up. Your head's always bigger than your stomach as such. So you just go in there and, 98 I competed. I think 99 did well in the ITFs. I went over Madcap and I think it was Siang was the other dude that was, I was living with Madcap at the time. There's another dude called Siang who was a local scratcher and stuff. He was hanging out with us. He was doing shows with us as part of the Break Beast Heavyweights or whatever. We're doing shows, promoting. We went over to the Hi-Fi Club over in Melbourne or whatever and competed against J Rev for the first time and Kuya and all those dudes.
Yeah.
That was the first kind of taste of going into state and battling. And I got second then, and then we competed in the ITF Nationals back here in Adelaide. And got second to Kuya in '99.
So you never clinched that first place?
Nah, Kuya tipped me, man. I beat Samurai in the semis or whatever. And I top qualified in the first round, and I'm like, blew my head out of the water because I thought I'd never get close. And they put me as first in the first round. I'm like, literally shitting myself. I was shaking on stage. And I got all the way to second, but I didn't have the sets in the end. I didn't have the depth of sets because you had to do 90-second battles, and you were doing three battles or so. So you had 10 or so sets. The more you had in your, in your bag, the more you could pull out. And especially if you wanted to tailor it for someone, you needed to have so much depth of routines. And I was a little bit green on my routines. You know what I mean? I'd had my good ones, and I was relying on them to get me as far as I got. And then I kind of ran out of steam at the last minute. And Kuya was he had better skill than me at that time. He was way more complex. So props to him for that. That was pretty good battles. Those good memories, man.
And then how about DMCs?
DMCs I did 2000 in Adelaide again. I think I got third again, and then 2001 I won it in SA. So won 2001 DMC.
Now back in that time, how solid would you say SA was in the turntablism?
Yeah, man, solid, very. Melbourne's always been solid. You know what I mean? They've always had that depth of, talent and things like that. I mean, back then, Select was kind of more Perth. He wasn't really Melbourne at that time, early 2000s or whatever. Then he moved to Melbourne. J Red, obviously, and, you know, those cats over in Melbourne, there was tons of them, Kuya and Dexter. And Samurai was, you know, still pretty new. You know, he's a young kid, basically, back then. There was, like, Decipher and some other cats and Sun and a few other dudes and out of Sydney. But Adelaide had the depth, man. It was good. We had Submine, we had Kim Dezen, had myself. You know, Stain then started. He was like, you know, he was the one, you know, coming up at that stage. And that dude got good real quick, you know what I mean? From that 2001, he was still a bit light on in his skill. And then by 2003, he was burner, you know what I mean? Like, no one was touching him, you know? He just went and I think he scratched for a year solid, that dude.
So I think around the time he came in, you, Kim Dezen.
Yeah, I never really battled much after 2002 or so. I pretty much kind of bailed out after that. And that was kind of more when I was concentrating more on recording and stuff. It started to come into it a little bit more so. So just judging battles, and then I wanted to play more out and then also tour around. And the crew thing started to come into it a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like Culture Kings had dropped. And, you know, it was before it all popped off heaps, you know, in terms of, you know, the Calling dropped or whatever. I think what was Calling 2004 or something.
Yeah, I think 03, 04 around there.
So, yeah, when Left Foot, Right Foot came out or whatever, I was on a track or two of that, I think, or a track of that. You know, Suffolk asked me to come into the studios and just scratch on track or whatever. And, yeah, that was pretty cool. And, you know, things are starting to move with After Hours as well. And, you know, a bit of Oar stuff as well was happening. And, you know, it was all around that time I started to get more involved with that.
That's the whole Certified Wise sort of era.
Yeah, that was that's when the full-on growth of that era, you know, it just boomed, yeah.
I guess tell us a bit about Certified. Like, how did you become a part of that whole thing, and when did that officially sort of happen?
That's a real good question of when officially it happened. It was already kind of like a bigger crew type of thing. It was like I was hanging out with Madcap heaps, and then Madcap fell out of the scene. There was a couple of gigs there where Madcap wasn't particularly liked in the scene. It was very much Southside crew, you know. It was the Pulling Strings and Hilltop crew, and there was the Madcap kind of, you know, crew. And I was kind of hanging out with Madcap a lot, just doing gigs with him. Didn't really understand the beef back then myself. Obviously, it went a lot deeper and went back a lot further. Yeah. And I still to this day don't understand it 100%, but you know what I mean? Obviously, I wasn't privy to it all. So, you know, then after Madcap kind of dropped off the scene pretty quickly, he got beaten up pretty bad one gig. And, he kind of disappeared off the scene, and I ended up having a falling out with him as well. Moving out, living with him and shit, and moving out. Kind of started hanging out with Hetty and edits and stuff from After Hours. Got along well with them, you know what I mean? And it was just kind of from there. I think, you know, it took me. I was probably a year later or something like that, you know, because we were partying all the time, you know, hanging out and just drinking and stuff like that. And it wasn't long after that, because I was just about getting busy with like minds, you know what I mean? And these dudes were doing hip hop, and it was like, you know, all I wanted to do was scratch on tracks and be a DJ, you know. So, you know, it wasn't too long before they said, well, you know, we're going to add you and, you know, a few others to Certified, and it kind of grew. And originally it was just the basic crew, if you know what I mean. So it was just, you know, the Hilltop guys and After Hours, and, you know, and it kind of grew a little bit, you know, after that. So a few extra people kind of got added to the fray, and, you know, it was murky times. Can't remember exact timelines, man. Yeah.
And so now around that early 2000 period, you also dropped a mixtape.
Yeah. Yep.
Amalgamated.
Representation, yeah.
Yeah. And that was
weird, man. I did that basically to I bought this, like, was it hard disk recorder thing? There's this 12-track hard disk Akai recorder. Thought I was the shit, man. Yeah, 12 tracks, man. Cost me the arm and a leg, man. And I was recording on that, and all I wanted to do was document my DMC and ITF sets as such. I wanted to kind of put out a blend tape because everyone had mixtapes and stuff, and CDs were obviously a better way of doing it at that stage. So I wanted to put out a blend tape, but with my routines and things like that in there. And, you know, basically just got it. I recorded it all myself and in my bedroom and got it mastered at Disc Edits. And, man, I sold tons of them, man. It's like nowadays, you'd never be able to do that nowadays. You just can't do that. Can't even upload anything nowadays without getting it taken down. You know, complete breach of copyrights and stuff, you know. But that was cool back then, you know, and it was a way of me getting my my name out there a bit more as well. You know, that was the stage I was starting to work at Derringer's Music as well. Right. I was working there, and so like the broader kind of dance music community in which hip hop was still very much a part of as such, you know, starting to get recognition there, you know, from the guys running like Enchanted Forest and those dudes and stuff like that. And you know what I mean? You kind of get, you know, introduced to a lot of industry kind of stuff. So working there as well as, you know, putting out this mixtape kind of started raising my profile. And, you know, I was just selling it on consignment through Big Star and, you know, places like that. I shifted like thousands of those things.
For real?
Yeah, I pressed up over 2,000 of them things.
And got rid of them all?
Got rid of them all, man.
Just in Adelaide or national?
Just in Adelaide.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. No one really knows the numbers. I pressed up 500 to start with, and they just went. And then I did another 500, and I just did another 500, another 500. I ended up at around 2,200 or something, I think.
And what, at like $30 a pop?
No. I used to sell them at Big Star for like $10 a pop.
Okay.
Yeah. And they'd give me 10, they'd sell it for 15 or something.
Yeah. That's pretty chill. It's a nice little bit of pocket change at
that
that time.
Well, I just spend it on vinyl. You know what I mean? I just spend it on records, basically. You know, walk in there and get my consignment money and buy it on wax on the shelves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was kind of chill, you know. But it took, you know, that took a few years to shift that many. But you know what I mean? Like back then, like that was as many numbers as like proper releases were getting. Yeah.
And then, so how long do you reckon you spent on that tape? Because I remember when I was making mine, I'd heard yours, and instantly I was like, well, I can't fuck with this. But, you know, it still did sort of inspire me a bit. And I was just like, there's some cool transitions, a lot of juggles and stuff. Was that like a project that took
6 months or so?
Yeah,
a few months. Yeah, it would have been, because I'd wake up and I'd do a bit, you know what I mean, in the mornings or something like that. And then I'd kind of, it was kind of weird. I never planned it out. I never planned it. I just kind of, well, this is cool. I'm going to go with this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I would slowly delete, you know, record, delete, record, delete, and it would slowly kind of grow until, hey, I've got 60 minutes or whatever, done. Push end, next. You know what I mean? It wasn't really planned, and it wasn't. And that was kind of what was good about it as well. I think because it just kind of came out the way it came out. I didn't really plan it. I would have changed so much of that now, but it was the way it was, you know.
And this was still before you were doing a lot of the stuff with MCs. And
Yeah. That came out. Well, that had a lot of sets from 2001, so it came out late 2001, 2002.
So you would have had a bit of a buzz, but that tape actually helped you. Gain more of a buzz within Adelaide.
Yeah. It gave me a lot of gigs and stuff like that as well. You know what I mean? And then it was well and truly entrenched in the hip hop scene then. It's
cool how like back in the day, mixtapes had that impact. You know, like they'd help with the profile.
Oh hell yeah, yeah. And you know, it's still to this day, you know, that even you know about that is remarkable. You know, from that's over 15 years old now, man.
Yeah, man. No, I remember we were bumping out. I think we were year 12 when I came across it. Yeah, like a 01. I just remember.
Crazy, hey? 15 years, man. You know what I'm saying?
We used to do burnouts in my mate's Commodore and shit, cranking that and a few other joints. You mentioned Kim DeZen.
Yeah. Huge influence on me, man.
Yeah, now I remember those 4 turntable routines, watching them at gigs. And I just thought, wow, that's the illest shit. And since then, as far as Adelaide goes,
we haven't
really seen it since. And I didn't really see it with anyone else at that point in time. It was just you two doing it. And it looked very just improv, freestyle.
It was. We didn't plan any of it. So none of that was planned. And sometimes it worked better than others. And you know what I mean? Sometimes it would just flow and it would work and it would be sick. And then sometimes we'd really push it, you know what I mean? But we'd just have a laugh and throw the next record on, you know what I mean? It was all about if it was working at the time. And that was what was brilliant about him. And man, that was probably, it's a big call, but I'm going to probably say that was some of my fondest memories of DJing ever, would be 4-deck sets with Kim in those, you know, leading up, I think it was before Craze we did them, before, you know, those Vocal Lords gigs and things like that, or we did them before, you know, international acts. Man, they were fun. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I used to sneak like to the front as close as I could and just try to figure out what the fuck y'all were doing.
Kim would be the illest drummer. You know, we worked out that basically I don't have his rhythm, man. And he'd have that bonesy kind of, you know what I mean, that chop, you know, and he'd have the illest drums. So, and he'd just start off drumming and then I'm like, all right, I'm just going to be like lead guitar over the top. You know what I mean? I'm just going to do something over the top. And we'd always have an exit ready before. So we'd be like, all right, you go in from this into this. Start drumming. This is our bailout record, ready, primed on this deck over here. You know what I mean? So if all goes pear-shaped, we just push play. You know what I mean? Yeah, and we'll milk it and see how far we could go with it. You know, good fun, man.
Yeah, nah, that was a big influence on me watching that shit.
Yeah, that was.
And there was a lot of them. There was a stage where
we did heaps of them after a while. We kept on doing them over and over and over again. Yeah.
And then, so did you guys ever battle head-to-head in ITF format?
Not really. Kim, yeah, there was a couple of DMCs in which Kim, that was like the early ones where he beat me basically. So 99 and 2000 DMCs Adelaide. Kim won them and yeah, I got second and third, that type of thing. Yeah, that was when he was definitely had a higher skill level than what I could achieve. And I think his 2000 DMC set, one of the illest. Still to this day, man. I love that set of his.
Is it on YouTube?
There is actually a bit of practice. I think Ashley Kilo, he put up a little snippet up on his Facebook or on YouTube not long ago of him just practicing a couple of bits. I think there might be some snippets of him up of doing some of those juggles and some of that set. It's the best, man. If you ever get a chance, it's not very good footage out there, but if you get a chance to catch it, 2000 DMCs, Kim Zen, he took it right up to Dexter, man. And
Dexter ended up coming second to Craze in the World.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the level that shit was going at. You know, which was crazy, man. That's crazy.
I was talking to Samurai. Samurai popped through.
Yeah.
And we were talking about all the DMCs and ITF stuff. Now, one thing that he said was he kind of felt like in the peak of all that DJ battle stuff, he was a bit isolated from, you know, the rest of the people that would compete. I mean, do you remember that being?
Yeah, I do. The DJs were dicks, man. We all hated it. Like, man, it was all ego. As much as you say this now, as like looking back at it, everyone, there was very few dudes that were full on, mate. Like, we all wanted to beat each other, man. Like, it was all, yeah, that's a six set, but you wanted to beat him. You know what I mean? And it was, everyone was out to kill everyone. And, you know, I know that, you know, Samurai and the Victorian dudes and Jay and that, they had some beef and shit. So, you know what I mean? And I seen Samurai's interview with you, man. Humble dude. Humble dude. Yeah. How he took a shit on the whole scene? No, you didn't. No, he didn't. But yeah, whatever. Yeah, it was just because everyone wanted to kill everyone else. You know what I mean? It was all a very competitive thing, man. Full-on competitive thing. And it was kind of good getting away from that as well, and just DJing, you know what I mean? With the crew stuff, you didn't get that as much. And, you know, with when we're DJing with Kim, you know what I mean? Like those gigs, that was just about records, man, and hip-hop, you know? That wasn't about trying to beat one another, you know what I mean? That was just about trying to, you know, put on the dope set. Simple as that, yeah.
So there was like a Melbourne-Sydney thing.
Yeah, man, like there was always kind of rivalry. It was healthy rivalry, man. You know, I got a lot of respect for those Melbourne dudes as well, like Jay and, you know, Select and those dudes. They were so skillful as well back then. And Kuya and that as well. Everyone was pretty chill, you know, and Kilo and that. Those dudes, you know, they put me on over there as well. You know what I mean? And, you know, they were very much entrenched in the hip-hop scenes over there as well. You know, and that was cool. You know, I never had any kind of issues with really any of them in terms of
so SA never really got sucked into.
No, not really, man. I don't think so. You know, me and someone never really saw eye to eye. You know, but nothing like, you know, we're spitting chips at each other or anything. You know.
Yeah, it's just DJ shit.
It's just DJ shit. Simple as that, man. It's easy to say that now. When you're in the moment, it's a bit different. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I remember, like, you know, just being a spectator of the whole DJ culture, at least here in Adelaide, in that time. And I just remember thinking and feeling like, man, that just looks like a very competitive and intense environment to be amongst. And if you don't cut, you know, if your skills don't cut the mustard, you're fucking out of there. And everyone will let you know next.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of politics bullshit as well, man. Politics filtered throughout everything. You know what I mean? That's hip hop, man, and it's through hip hop, has been through hip hop, as well as DJing the turntables aside. You know, hey, I think it was when I won the DMCs, my prize mixer got pinched from the actual DMCs.
Oh,
so
wow!
I won the Technics mixer, and that went walkabout that night. And it wasn't until a day or so later that it reappeared. I'm not going to delve into that one any much more, but yeah, you know what I mean? Politics was rife, man.
You found out who took it though?
Oh, yeah.
Was there any repercussions for...
Shit was said, shit was done. I got my mixer back, it's all good.
And
you know what I mean? Yeah, you know.
Yeah, man, who the fuck steals the prize?
But that was it, man. You know, shit went missing all the time, man, back then, you know.
You know, a lot of people know you as one of the original members of the Funkoars. Tell us, I guess, how that came into the fold, because I imagine that's all interweaved with...
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because I was DJing for after hours as such. I was hanging out with Hetty and edits and stuff and DJing for those guys because Javo kind of left. And Kirk was, you know, kind of brought Trials into the fold and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And those guys were unorganized at best, you know what I mean? Like they were haphazard, you know, hit and miss, but they were dope, you know what I mean? And they suited, like, their energy was like the energy I wanted to get into as well. So, you know what I mean? And they were very much, we were all friends, you know what I mean? And they were starting to come into the fold. So I started to help them out in shows. So, you know, they would do a show, I think it was like the After Hours launch, and they were supporting or whatever. And so I'd get up and DJ. I used to DJ for everyone back then.
I remember that.
You know what I mean? I literally was, if you didn't have a DJ, I'd stay on stage and scratch for you. That was the way I was, you know what I mean? You know, there's that Culture of Kings too, I think, video going around where I can't even remember. And I look back at it and I DJ'd for like Hunter and I DJ'd for like 4 crews or whatever. And I was like, you just don't see that nowadays, you know? Yeah, you know, that. So I started helping him out in a few shows, and I was working at Derringer's and helping him out with recording processes as well. Well, they recorded most of Stepdaddy down at like Sester's old place. And, you know, they wanted me to do some cuts on the record or whatever. And so, you know, I was pretty much part of the crew then, you know, and recorded cuts on it and mixed it as well. You know, I started mixing it because I was doing after hoursy stuff and a bit more of the engineer and kind of took control of it a little bit. You know, Kirk was also the manager of the band back then. So he was kind of looking after them and, you know, trying to get him, you know, organised. And so I kind of came along on board and kind of helped with that and kind of stuck. We saw eye to eye. We got along well then. So it's just crazy back then.
So basically, Who's Your Stepdaddy, the making of it is kind of what, by the time it was finished and you guys were pushing it, you were a Funkoar. Yeah. Now, I remember like with that record, 2003 is when it dropped. I mean, when you were making that record, do you remember the process? Because obviously the process changes quite a bit from
Yeah, that was a different record for Oars because it was mainly recorded at Sesta's place. So their vocal takes and the beat production, I wasn't privy to a huge amount of it back then. I literally was just a turntablist, if you know what I mean. And so I would get these, Logic tracks that they'd kind of recorded on and such, and here's our vocal takes and stuff like that. And I'd go home and record my cuts and things like that over these tracks and send them through and say, hey, what do you think? And then I kind of mix them up as well. So they'd give me the full-on finished tracks as such, and okay, I'll take it home and mix it as such. So I was more the finishing engineer or the mix engineer. And so, okay, I'll kind of collaborate, put it all together. They didn't have a clue about how to do any of that. They would just wanted to rap, and they'd make beats and they just wanted to rap on them. And so I'd kind of finish it as such. And here's a finished product as such, you know what I mean? Kind of get it done and introduce them to, mastering and things like that. So go down to Neville Disc Edits and get it mastered. I'd had a little bit of preview, with Baz. I was friends with Baz at that stage as well, and he was like the master at all this shit. So, you know what I mean? And I was obviously working at Derringers and learning a great deal as well. So it was kind of like we were the two studio nerds, if you know what I mean, that would kind of oversee those type of things. So, Baz was very much that, and I learned a lot from him in those early days as well.
And then I guess with the names of the songs and the concepts of the songs, that stuff was all sort of laid out before, you came.
Pretty much. They were pretty much, that was all their kind of, doing as such. I didn't really have much of a huge amount of say. I was obviously there for a bit of it and bits and parts of that. But Who's Your Stepdaddy was more about me just adding that flavour to it in terms of a turntablist flavour. And back then, my skills were right up. So, I kind of went nuts on a few of the tracks, you know what I mean? And that it was kind of like, and I kind of like that as well. The reason why I really wanted to do that as well, because there was bugger all turntablists at that stage doing cuts on records. Like, you didn't see that as much. Baz would do some stuff, next or whatever, so a Matter of Time and that. And this is before, Lyrical Commission had really got, Jay and that had gone out with his cuts and stuff. There wasn't a huge amount of turntablist kind of craziness, like, Revolution kind of stuff on a track. So I kind of wanted to add that, kind of flavour, going nuts on a track type of thing to a local hip-hop release. And, that's kind of what I wanted to cement into that as well. So, yeah.
Now, when you were, when you were formulating the record, the name Funkoars had already been established?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that was that was the doing of Charles and Seti and Hans, pretty much. Yeah.
And then, so what did you make of that name when you first heard it?
I can't even remember. I don't even remember, to be honest. Back then, it was what it was. I think they knew it was a shitty name, and they just kind of went with it. You know what I mean? It was the Halls of Funk, and that was it. It kind of stuck. It's kind of like Flashy D, you know what I mean? Like, that shit stuck as much as I hated it, and it just stuck, Yeah. And I wasn't around for most of that part, you know what I mean? That was just before I kind of come along, because that was CS9 before, and I were hanging out with other dudes. And Charles had that mixtape as well out, and a few other little beats, and he had a demo tape. Remember Charles's demo tape and shit?
I've heard about this stuff. I never actually heard any of the music.
Yeah.
I just remember hearing, the name CS9.
Yeah.
That was before I'd caught on.
Yeah.
When I first caught on to the Oars, it was Who's Your Stepdaddy? And I remember obviously hearing the Funkoars, and then I heard Who's Your Stepdaddy? I'm thinking, this sounds dirty. And then I listened,
filthy as fuck.
And then I listened to the record, and I was just like, damn, these dudes are just like, they just don't give a fuck.
Yeah, it was ruthless stuff, man. You know what I mean? Like, you can think about that record now and think about nowadays climate.
You couldn't get away with it.
It's just not going down anymore, you know what I mean?
I actually loved Behind the Stump.
Yeah.
I really liked that song.
Yeah.
And the one that shocked me the most, but also was memorable because of your cuts, was Kidney Shifters.
Yeah.
And you've cut up that Biggie Smalls, Here We Go, Here We Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. The title itself, Kidney Shifters, I just remember just like, well, this will be interesting. And then you press play and you're like, yep.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah. It's kind of ruthless, isn't it?
So how old would you have been when that?
I was definitely older than the other cats. So back then was 2003 or something. So I was about 20. What am I now? I'm 41 now, man. So late 20s, something like that.
And so when that, when you're a part of a record where that's kind of content's come out, and it was the first of its kind, like to my memory, no one in Australia was really doing that type of rapper style. Yep. You guys cop any backlash? Or?
Oh no, trying to explain that to people around you is, it was pretty hard type of thing because you wanted to be proud of this music because you knew what it meant in the scene. But you can't play it to your mum and you can't play it to, like, I work at Derringer's or something. I go to work and they're like, Funkoars make a bit of a name for themselves, they're making a bit of noise and shit like that, but they don't get it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, dude, for sure, you copped a bit of heat for that, you just immature kids as such, you know what I mean? And it was, to a certain degree, they're fucking true. It's right. It was. You know what I mean? I'm not denying that.
Yeah, it's a crazy.
But there was an element of hip hop that, what's, a part of hip hop that I kind of like is that ignorant shit as well, to a certain degree. I kind of like a part of that. And, that's gone now. You know what I mean? You can't have that anymore. So it's like, it was a part of the hip hop sound. And I think it's a part that needs to be remembered. But, you know what I mean? Like, you can't do it anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's not getting radio spin.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And it was, but that was part of it, was being, against the system. You know what I mean? Fuck you.
Yeah, the rebellious side of hip hop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely.
And the dirtiest shit we did, it didn't seem to matter. You know what I mean? It'd just get stupid with it and you'd only ever get more and more kind of rep. And so it would be like, oh, we'll just keep going with this then.
So 3 years later, 06.
Yeah, 06.
That's the greatest hits.
Yeah, so that stage we were on Obese. So
now tell us, I guess, first of all, how the whole Obese thing formulated, and then, into dropping that particular album.
Yeah, well, basically, at that stage, obviously the hoods had popped off, you know what I mean, with the calling had already jumped off, if you know what I mean, from there. And so Aussie hip-hop had gotten a lot bigger, even if it was in its infant days. And Obese had obviously started to barrel roll through as a bit of a powerhouse, you know what I mean? They were the label and Pegs was, signing dudes up and stuff. So it was pretty much along the lines of Kirk was still looking after the band as such. And obviously the hoods and stuff were, we're pretty tight with those guys. And so they'd kind of organised, look, Pegs wants you on the label type of thing. The hoods were there. It was like a family type of thing. The hoods were there, so the Oz will go there. You know what I mean? Vince will go there. The whole kind of crew will go there as such, and we'll release with Obese type of thing. You know what I mean? And so, Pegs kind of hooked us up with a deal as such. And, yeah, we were recording at Cester's. He'd moved again, and we're recording there mainly. I was involved in a lot more of the process this time, you know what I mean, in recording. I'd hooked them up with some more gear and kind of up the process and the quality of the record and the recording, trying to get them getting a better sound and stuff. And, it's just continued on that merry way, basically.
Now, that, for me, that's one of my favourite Aussie LPs to this day. The title track on it, The Greatest Hit, I just remember that. I was like, wow, this is dope. And I replayed it like a few times. It's just a fun record. What do you remember from that release? Because what I remember was there's like a launch at HQ.
Yep.
And...
Oh, we launched at the German club.
I was at the German club.
Yep.
Oh, that's right.
We had a couple of strippers up on stage or something, or dancers, sorry.
Yeah, okay. See, I actually think that I might have DJ'd that one.
Yeah.
But then there was another one at HQ.
Yes.
And that would have been after that.
Yes, that was the one where we did the DVD filming.
Now, yeah, that's right. Okay, now that I'm thinking about it, both those shows were classic.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember was just like, so, you know, Who's Your Stepdaddy dropped in '03, a couple years have gone past, Funkoars is generating buzz. And one thing I was thinking I'd trip on was like, some of these lyrics are so derogatory to women, yet your female fan base just keeps growing and growing.
That's what I was mentioning before. It doesn't matter what they said on record. It didn't seem to matter.
Nah, man.
So fuck it, we'll keep going.
And where it really hit me was at the HQ one, so the DVD launch, like that was a sellout. And when the title track, The Greatest Hit, came on, and the hook is like, "Ladies, is that a bun in the oven?" All the girls are just singing it at the top of their lungs. They're running to the front. And I just remember seeing that, and it was so tripped out. I was like, wow, like, do y'all even hear what they're saying?
No. I flip out to this day, man. You know what I mean? Now that the scene's gotten so different, I mean, shit, you know, you listen to those lyrics back now, and even the dudes that wrote those lyrics are tripping over their own words. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And it's like, I can't understand. There was a certain thing, you know, obviously there was a big buzz and it was a certain sound and it was a certain vibe. And, yeah, you know, it blew, but to a certain degree, it was fucking hilarious, really. And you're right. Man. It didn't make sense, man.
Oh, it was incredible to see.
Yeah, good fun.
Remember. Oh, yeah, man. Like the Funkoars shows back in the days, like everybody, you know, knew it was a party.
That was the big thing. And that was the thing that was all about. They were about being a party. You know what I mean? It was much like Alcoholics records. You know what I mean? You know, you look at Liquidation or something like that. You listen to that. That's just a good vibe record. You know what I mean? And they're just talking about piss the whole way through. You know what I mean? But besides the content, they were just party records. And that's what Greatest Hits was.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the licks because that's what we used to say. We're like, the oars are like, you know, the Australian version of the licks.
Yeah,
like
and back then, you know what I mean? And that was a perfect kind of, yeah, that's the way I felt as well, you know, to a certain degree. That was where they fitted in as such. You know, always made their own lane, you know, and that's also what made them, you know, viable or a, how can I say, still a name to this day. It's because obviously they made their own lane. You know, they didn't copy someone else or anything else. The dudes were mad original and just came out with their own shit.
Yeah, no one else was coming even close to that.
And the sound was totally different, yeah.
And so when you dropped the Greatest Hits, did you see a real big, you know, like say if you remembered back to when you guys dropped Who's Your Stepdaddy, did you see like a significant...
Stepdaddy wasn't organised still. So, yeah, I didn't see a massive difference with that. We did a few interstate shows and stuff like that. But then when the Obese thing happened and the Hoods were start going about their thing, I was pushing more of the band to do something, you know what I mean? And so was Kirk, and we were pushing for the band to get serious about this because we could see a buzz and stuff like that. And I wanted to make a go of it as much as possible, you know what I mean? I was really pushing for that. And that's about the time when it started to click. I was living and breathing Funkoars. You know, that was my baby then. You know, Funkoars, I registered the Funkoars as it was my own business. So the actual Funkoars as a business was my business as a sole trader initially. And I was like all about making this band work, you know what I mean? This group work. And I started to think less and less Reflux and more Funkoars. You know what I mean? And even more so as it went on. So that was about the time when that started to kick in for me, you know what I mean? Like it was like, this is, you know, with the Obese bars and the block party tours and interstate shows, we could actually do interstate shows and make some money and things like that. You know, there still wasn't a lot of money in it, but we could actually, you know, get around interstate and do more shows, and we're starting to get more name of ourselves, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember those Obese block party gigs.
And then we did the DVD and stuff like that. You know, that was, you know, a big decision for us to make. We're going to do a DVD, you know.
When DVD
only the Hoods did DVD, then. You know, and that's what I was saying. We were pushing this to kind of grow. We wanted it, I wanted it to be bigger and bigger. And the guys did too, but they were haphazard at best in terms of trying to organise the oars. It's like herding cats. It's not easy, man.
How did the DVD sales do?
Pretty good, to be honest. Didn't see much of cash. Cheers, Obese.
Oh, shit.
If you want to get into that.
Tell us about the situation with that. Obviously, I'm guessing that the splits were not quite right.
Oh no, look, the splits were all right, and it was all good to start with, and it was all happy families. And yeah, we got some money paid to us from Obese were all good. They weren't exactly an organised bunch either. You know what I mean? And it's only after that, basically before Hangover kind of came along. That's when things before Hangover kind of came along, that it went all pear-shaped.
So then what, how did things...
Basically, Hoods had left. Hoods had done their bid with Obese. And so they were moving on. And they were going to, create, something more. Or they were winding up as such. And obviously, we wanted to get away from Obese. Things weren't working out so well. There was a couple of, discrepancies and some accounting, some creative accounting as such. And some, bashing of heads against the wall with us with that. Kirk was still looking after the group and stuff like that, moving into recording of the Hangover. And, Kirk was really good friends with Adam up at Shogun. He was buying heaps of records from Adam up in Shogun and helping him out. And Shogun was then also distributing a heap of cats. And we really wanted to put out the next record with him. He was offering us, obviously, a great deal more money as well. But we also just wanted to get away from the bullshit that was Obese and what was going south down there, you know what I mean? And it ended up getting nasty, trying to get away from Obese, them trying to pin us to a certain contracts and things like that, and us basically saying the contracts don't exist, and you know what I mean? And it got nasty a little bit there, and, it wasn't just us that went through that process as well. There are other acts that, obviously have been through this drama with Obese. And so, we ended up putting out Hangover with Shogun, basically.
And then, so that would have been, that's 2008?
That was 2007, 2008. Hangover came out originally.
And the lead single from that was Sally?
Yeah, Black Sally, yeah.
Now, tell us about, once again, like that record, so you guys have put it out on a different label. And that's
so we were going through turmoil. Yeah, we're going through turmoil with Obese. Shogun gave us a real good run for it, you know what I mean? And we pushed that as hard as we can. We got some real good feedback from Triple J. They made an album of the week, which was, we don't even know how we got. In the end,
was that the first time that you guys landed on the J's?
Yeah. Oh no, they played a little bit of it.
It wasn't exactly radio friendly.
No, that wasn't radio friendly. They tried to give us a shot, and then basically we just effed it up by giving them shitty content. Really, you know what I mean? They wanted to get behind us, and they knew that we had a sound and we had a following as such, but they couldn't until Hangover came out, and then there was enough content there for them to push. And so when that came along, they made us album of the week, which was really good. We got a heap of radio play. And then from that, it started to get big, you know what I mean? We were still growing at a really good rate at that stage. And, trying to organise that Hangover initial tour was pretty hectic. At that stage, the Hoods were still going up and up and up like this, like a rocket ship. And I was trying to... at that stage I was touring around with the Hoods as well, as their kind of roadie / DJ, kind of tech help on the road as such, and as well as their tour manager. And so I was really heavily involved with the way that they did their business, and I wanted to put that into the oar. I wanted to take the oars, up as well. And so pushing to get as big as we could there. And, the first Hangover tour was good, looking good. Trying to get a booking agent on board, but at the same time we were looking at getting an agent to start booking our shows and trying to get into some festivals and things like that. And that was, all about when Kirk basically spat the dummy and didn't want to have anything more to do with it. He kind of left around the same time as the Hangover tour, and I started taking over. I just took over as the manager of the Oars then.
So now you guys are touring the album.
Yeah, so that time now we started to get a lot more touring. We did a couple of tours. We did Malfunction tour and stuff like that, and that was all booked with a help of premier artists and things like that. So we're starting to get some money in. We're starting to tour. I was managing the group, it was going great guns.
Oh, so you kind of took over from Kirk's role.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And at that stage, we kind of made a company as well. So I incorporated the Funkoars as a company and kind of starting to get a little bit more serious, you know what I mean? There's some good money coming in and, doing it seriously, making a go of it,
And which of the joints that made it to the Jays, was it just the Black Sally single?
Black Sally, What's Your Malfunction? Got a fair few spins, I think, as well. There was also Rain on the Masses, I think, got a fair few spins and stuff like that.
And we're talking like daytime rotation?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, it was good there for a while, yeah.
And then, so that's 2008-ish?
Yep.
And then
Shogun goes belly up. Adam goes missing. He bails. He just disappears. We're left with... We're doing festivals almost every weekend with no record on the shelf. It was shitty time. And at that stage, so then Golden Era had formed. So we obviously signed up with Golden Era, obviously, as the boys, you know what I mean? And so Golden Era comes along and goes, here, we'll put out your record, but we can't have the same record. So we had to make it a different edition of the Hangover. So that's when there's two different editions of the Hangover. So there's the premium or the golden edition, which is the Golden Era edition. And that had on the track with Ash Grunwald, Little Did I Know, whatever. And that got hammered on radio.
Yeah, wow.
So that one was the one that got a lot of radio spins. We put that out as the Golden Era edition. So it had the publicist, the hoods and stuff behind it. So it got more traction there. And yeah, we did another couple shows with Ash Grunwald and stuff like that. And it was going well.
So how different is the second version?
It's the same record, except it just has an extra track. It's pretty much it. It's just an extra track, yeah. It had to be slightly different.
Yeah, okay. And then so now you guys are on Golden Era.
Yep.
And, fast forward the clock to, say, 2011.
Yep.
The Quickening drops.
So, 2010, I was managing up until about 6 months or so before the Quickening dropped. And then we hired Nate Flagrant to come on as manager for the Oars. Because basically I'm not a manager and, we needed someone to do it properly, you know what I mean? We wanted to do as good as we could with this record. So obviously still with Golden Era, recording. Everything was kind of recorded and mixed up at my place, the last two records, like the Hangover and the Quickening and stuff. So I had my own studio at my place and looked after all of that, recording and mixing side of things. And as I said, I was less Reflux, more Oars. I put my whole head in the Oars. It was just all it was, you know what I mean? For me, it was just Oars. That's all it was. So trying to make it work as much as I can. And, Quickening did really well. You know what I mean? It took ages to make and get it finalised, but as do records do. But, that charted really well and, got rotation on Triple J and stuff. And, it's good.
Now, I remember briefly chatting to you off the back of that record and everything was cool, but I think there was a comment that you made from memory, something about like there was a shift in the way hip hop was going and, across the board tours weren't selling as well as what they were.
We had one shitty tour or not shitty tour, but a tour that struggled through to make a lot of cash or whatever. It was just down on numbers and stuff. And it was that time that, that suddenly you could hear that pop kind of stuff coming through, you know what I mean? 360 had come out with his stuff and you know what I mean? And it was like, there was a shift in the overall, mainly what Triple J was playing and a shift in what was getting released. Suddenly Oars was suddenly what you would class as a lot harder than the average release, you know what I mean? And also there was a dry up of just general live shows as well at that stage, you know.
Just briefly, that reminds me on the topic of 60, you know, coming through around that time with the more pop stuff. There was a magazine article where like I think you guys addressed a comment that he made, and now off memory it was something about like apparently he made a comment about how like in hip hop now you don't need cuts in your hooks.
Yeah. And I took this. I hated that. I fucking hated that. And I said, you know, now there's dudes putting out tracks without cuts in that. How sad is that? Because to me, that's the shit I grew up on. You know what I mean? And yeah, you don't now. You know, you don't even see DJs now on tracks and stuff. You don't hardly even see DJs with crews anymore. You just see solo MCs. You know, it's even moved away from the groups now.
Yeah, man.
And in terms of, you know, the ego is now pushed into hip hop so much so that it's just solo people now. Even, you know what I mean? It's getting less and less. It's more and more, even if you look at the mainstream. You know what I mean? It's just solo dudes, you know what I mean? You don't have the EPMDs anymore or A Tribe Called Quest. You have Kanye. You have Jay-Z.
Yeah.
You have, you know what I mean? You have single people. You don't have, you know, you have Kendrick Lamar. You don't have other people, groups anymore. It's getting less and less like that. So it's like, that pissed me off, that comment. I remember saying that. And because, you know, that was my thing. And the scratch part of tracks is what, you know, I grew up on. And that was part of hip hop. You know what I mean? It was part of the selection, a part of finding the right cut, finding that right part. Yeah, that's hip hop to me. You know what I mean? And yeah, I don't, you know, when people say you just don't need that shit or that's not what hip hop is anymore, it's kind of fucking pissed me off. Yeah.
Was that in like a print media or a radio?
Yeah, it was like I think it was in Rip It Up or something. Yeah.
And then you guys addressed it in print media as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember at the time reading that, I was like, oh, you know, that's kind of cool to see Reflux addressing that comment, because obviously I agree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a big part of what made hip hop for me, not always, but was like those premier scratch hooks or those Pete Rock cuts behind, you know, with the production and all that sort of stuff.
Man, the art of scratch is part of tracks that brought us up, man. It's Trem, you know, fucking shout outs to Trem, man. Nailed it on that. It was just, man. That's what it was, man. You know what I mean? And that's it's unfortunately is a part that's died, you know.
At a certain point, there was a line or a couple of lines that were thrown at by someone of the Oars in Delta's direction. I think it might have been Honson, but I can't remember exactly what the line was. I just remember there was some sort of tension there. Am I wrong in thinking that, or there was?
Oh yeah, because Suf and Delta, they used to, you know, there was never any much love towards Delta out of the whole crew. You know what I mean? I'm not going to lie about it. I think they've kissed and made up now, but you know what I mean? There was never much love there between the crew, and there was never much interaction either. You know what I mean, between the two. Whether Hans, I can't remember any specific line.
Maybe it wasn't Hans. Maybe it was, man, on that DVD, or maybe it was Vent, something about Jaws. You know how Delta had.
Oh yeah, because I know. I remember Delts had a few goes at Vents, you know, I think as well, and I think they had their kind of words. You know what I mean? Vents used to, obviously, you know, his first few records was, you know what I mean? What subject matter he was on, you know what I mean? And Delta saw through that and just kind of went, well, you know, talking revolution and yet, you know, yeah, okay, sure. You know, I think Delta saw through that and, you know, kind of had a jab and so then, you know, of course, when someone has a jab, it's jab on. So it's back and forth, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So nothing ever eventuated from that. It was just shit that was on wax, a few words here and there.
Pretty much as I know, yeah.
And then would that, when you say, you know, Suf and Delts didn't originally get along, would that just be like a competitive?
Yeah, I think there was things said way back in the day, man, like this is going way back, you know what I mean? And I don't know the exact soul of that, you know, or the heart of exactly that. But yeah, it's like those kind of crews never really got along, you know what I mean? There was always things said from that crew or, you know, opposing crews there. It's old kind of beef, that is.
Because I always was like, because once I came, you know, clued in to hip hop, particularly from Adelaide, let alone Australia, it was, to me, it was like, I remember Hood Soul of the Beat. I heard that and I was like, wow, what the fuck? And that was, someone told me, they're like, oh yeah, they're in Blackwood. I was in Flagstaff. I'm like, 15 minutes down the road. These guys live just around the corner.
Yeah.
And seen Delta freestyle at a Craze gig at the Tivoli. Yeah. Who's making references to the 720 and shit. And I was like, the fuck? Like, who is this dude? I'm like, this is dope. I've never seen this shit. So they were always like in my head, kind of like the two, particularly out of Adelaide. And then, you know, as a DJ, your mind says, oh, you know, you'd mix this with this. How is there no collab? Yeah. Are the illest cats. And they lived, you know, say within 20, 30-minute drive. How and why is this not happening? So my curious self starts asking questions. Yeah. And then that's how I sort of came across, you know, there's some sort of thing. But
shit that got said years ago, man. Shit that got said years ago.
Yeah, okay.
No, that was even before my time to a certain degree. You know
wow.
Yeah.
No shit. I'll have to get Benny in.
Man. Benny's a straight shooter. He'll tell you. Yeah.
Fucking oath. As someone who, you know, was rolling around with Certified Wise and was a member of Funkoars and, you know, was right there in that early 2000 period, you would have seen the Hoods sort of develop, or you've seen quite a chunk of the Hoods development, because as you said...
I remember putting on shows down at Rumpus Room, which was Flagstaff Hill.
Wow.
The Flaggy at the back room there.
Flaggy Hill Hotel.
Yeah, man. I remember paying the Hoods $500 to headline one of the nights there, and that was a lot back then. And, you know, there being about 150 cats in the back room there on a Thursday night or something in Adelaide. So
that'd be like a 99,
something
2000?
Like that, 2000, 99 or something. I can't remember. Yeah, it was pretty early on.
Yeah,
I got flyers at home from that stuff. So, yeah, Social Change played and Crossbred and Hilltop and that. Yeah, we used to do it every month, I think.
And what were the crowds like?
Pretty good. I remember Charles, that was the first time I met Charles. Well, I snuck him in. He was underage. And Kirk kind of rolled up and said, oh, this cat wants to get in. And like Charles came up to me. I'm like, I was on the door, you know what I mean? It's fucking scummy, man. Don't worry about it. He was like, fucking sick, man, yeah. I was like, you know, that was it. If he was underage, it would have been 99, not 2000 or something, yeah.
Yeah, wow. And then so that would have been, because the first Hoods release was 97?
98, 97, 98. I think it was a matter of time, yeah.
And so that's after that, but before the second one.
Yeah, 2001 was Left Foot, Right Foot.
No, Back Once Again, though.
Yeah, Back Once Again was 98 or whatever. Oh, Matter of Time.
Was the second one.
Yeah, Back Once Again was earlier, wasn't it? 97, 96. Yeah.
So that Rumpus Room stuff.
Matter of Time was 98. Yeah. So it would have been 90. It would have been 2000, I reckon.
Okay. Now, the landscape obviously back then was so different to what it is now. I mean, now there is a full-on landscape. Back then, to my understanding, there wasn't really even, you know, there was a scene, but the only people that knew about it were the people doing it. So when the Hoods were doing these earlier shows, you know, what sort of numbers were being
150
pulled
or so people was what we would pull, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not completely privy to exactly all their numbers and stuff like that. You know, it started to grow pretty quickly though. You know, the Hoods always had, you know, they were always the number one crew, you know, simple as that. So they always had the bigger following out of anyone. They had a bit more vibe buzz. You know, they were better at it than anyone else pretty much.
And did you, like, could you pick it from an early stage, like this is something special? And
I kind of felt it, yeah. I really did. I believed in what we were doing. I really did. Even if other people didn't, I believed in what we were doing. Yeah, and as soon as it started to catch, I knew it was going to go. You know, in that 2003, 2004 period, you know, when the Hoods obviously started to get a radio play and other crews were starting to get on the scene as well, you know, Downside were doing good things, stuff like that. And there was a family as such kind of growing around the nation. I knew something was going to come out of it, yeah.
In those early stages, was there a lot of like oh, you know, what are you guys doing? This is American. You know, a lot of like...
Yeah, from the general public, I guess, yes and no. You either got unnoticed or you didn't get a lot of hate as such. There was a lot of misunderstanding, you know what I mean? Like, even from people like my parents and stuff, you know, they'd be like, what the hell are you doing? You know, what's this DJing that you're doing? You know what I mean? And then, you know, suddenly you're playing Big Day Out and they get it. You know what I mean? They go, oh, okay. You know, and they understand suddenly that it's more than that, and there is a following and there is, you know, a culture behind it as such and stuff, you know. But yeah, I mean, like it was always a massive uphill battle to get recognition and also respect on many fronts. I know with the Hoods, when I was starting to tour around with those guys and being their tech help, stagehand / DJ / whatever you name it, they got so much bullshit and hate from the rock bands and the rock roadies and things like that, and the whole festival crews and crowd, industry-wise, when they started hitting main stages, you know, and they were starting to get real big, and you know they were playing with Jet or something like that, you know what I mean? And the roadies and all, like, they would just treat us like shit, you know what I mean? Like they would be like, oh, here comes the, you know, the bullshit act, the token act, you know what I mean? And they'd, you know, clean the floor, wipe the floor with them in terms of crowd response, you know what I mean? And it'd be like, you know, that's what we're all about, and that type of thing. But it was years and years and years of, you know, getting treated at the second rate, for sure.
So late 90s, you know, you've booked them for a couple gigs.
Yeah. Just running a little small thing down there.
And then I think 01 was when Left Foot, Right Foot dropped.
Yep.
And so I remember that record because that was where Soul of the Beat was off.
Yep.
And that was where I first heard people, like, because I was in Flagstaff Hill, which is right down the road.
Yep.
You know, people going, oh, you know, Hilltop Hoods. Have you heard of Hilltop Hoods? They're from Blackwood. And then that's how it sort of came onto my radar.
Yep.
Now, did you see, like, quite a bit of popularity brewing at that stage?
Yeah, there was a little bit. Yeah. There was a little bit there. I mean, like, gigs were still getting quite reasonable turnouts, like the Culture King stuff. That got decent turnouts. And then, you know, the international touring acts that would be coming through. You know, Trent Rodent was still bringing out. Yeah, Slingshot.
Yeah,
he was bringing out dudes back then. And then, obviously that's where, you know, and PJ was doing good gigs. And Dimesy was getting busy, you know, he was doing gigs and stuff with PJ and Kirk. And, you know, Madcat was doing gigs and stuff like that. He'd be doing most of Trent's shows and dudes that he would be bringing out. You know what I mean? So there was like early shows like, it was like AC Alone at Proscenium and things like that. They were really good, you know, well turned out gigs. And then all the Vocal Lords gigs, you know, when Latyrix came and things like that, you know, they were really good gigs, man, you know. And that were really healthy turnouts. Like that was the Royal Pack, so it was like 800 people or something.
That was like the golden era for us.
Yeah.
You know,
that were really good gigs, man, yeah.
And so then the record after that was The Calling.
Yeah.
Which I think was 03-ish, end of 03,
03,
I think.
yeah.
Yep. And that's the one that had Nosebleed section.
Yeah.
And that, you know,
took off.
Yeah, it took it to another level. Now, I remember being at the launch at Planet.
Yep.
And it was like, wow. And I distinctly remember, what's the last joint on that album? The Sentinel. And that was, you know, I just remember that just like, man, this is popping. Like, people were just going nuts and shit. Now, as someone who was right there when all that was happening, tell us what you saw, like, in terms of, you know, when the Hood's kind of that popping sort of phase.
They were learning as they were going as well, you know what I mean? Like, they were just professional about their thing, but, like, to see the vibe of those gigs was awe-inspiring. It really was. And we got a high off of it. And you only wanted to do another one and do it better and do it bigger. And what can we do next? What can we do next? What's bigger? What's bigger? What's bigger? And the kings of that shit were always the Hoods because they always had the biggest following, the biggest crew, and the biggest foresight into seeing where, what, and their planning and their business was above everyone else and things like that. You know what I mean? And it still to this day, not many SA crews have even got to the stage of where they've got. You know what I mean? Like in terms of playing Thebby Theatre or, you know what I mean? Like, which is, to me, what I class the ultimate achievement in Adelaide. You know what I mean? When Oars played Thebby and stuff like that, it was like, yes, you know, we've fucking made it, you know, because this is like such a prestigious stage. You don't play Thebby to make money. You play Thebby to, you know, it's the best stage and it's just a sick crowd. And, you know, that's what we wanted to do. You know what I mean? Like that's a stamp of, yeah, you did it for perception and reputation. Yeah, bang.
Yeah, I remember when the Oars sold out Thebby, I was there. I think I might have warmed up, and that was actually the first time I met Hi-Fi Blake.
Yeah, yep.
Backstage and shit, and I started doing gigs for him after that. That was a crazy gig, man.
Yep.
That was some epic shit. And I think at Thebby, after the Hood's Calling launch...
Yeah, see, that was massive. When they did Thebby, it was like, holy shit has arrived. You know, everything's arrived, you know. That was the show that woke me up.
Yeah, now tell us about that, because from my memory, I just remember it was After Hours, then it was Funkoars.
Yeah, something like that, yep.
And then Stain came on. That was the first time I seen Stain, and like that changed a lot for me, man. He came out with, I remember like the LA hat, brim over
and he
the
used to
eyes.
have killer sets back then. Remember his set was nuts, man. He was just slamming through like records like Mixmaster Mike and shit. He was going through his records and killing it.
Yeah, that really had an influence, just that set alone. That was kind of like that, and you know the one I saw you play, Green Lantern. You know, some memorable ones that I was like, oh wow, I got to change the way I do my shit.
Yeah.
Now that particular gig, I mean, what do you remember from that night?
From which one?
The one at Thebby, which was 04, just after the Calling Out.
That was, yeah, that was an interesting one. It was the first of the feelings of those big home shows. And those big home shows by now, you know, there's been quite a few of them now, you know, that I was involved with, and there's obviously more so. But that was the first big one. Obviously, they had massive screens up on stage, you know what I mean? Like the set was not just them playing a record, it was also a visual feast, you know what I mean? And it was 6 sounds, 6 visuals, incredible set. That type of thing. And then when we got to support something like that and you're playing in front of 2,000 people, it was one of those nerve-wracking things where we got to step up and, you know, real appreciative of the opportunity to do something like that as well, to play in front of those kind of crowds. And you know they're going to be eating out of your hand, those type of things. And it's like, yeah, we're going to have fun with this.
Yeah.
But also that feeling of pride, you know what I mean? And this is the feeling this is what I was trying to portray as well. Like, you know, it wasn't just me being Reflux and playing out and getting my own feedback. It's like the Oars played and we rocked it, and then the Hoods played and I'd be sitting beside a stage with the Hoods and be like, yeah, man, I'm proud. You know what I mean? Like this is us. You know what I mean? Like playing to this and killing it. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, you know, you just got a vibe off of it. Everyone did.
And then I guess after that, that's when you would have been doing quite a bit of traveling with the Hoods.
Yeah. At that stage, I think it was like 06 when they bought Maestro out and they did that Stopping All Stations tour. So it was a hard road, you know what I mean? So Stopping All Stations tour. I did that. It was like 30-something shows around the country. And that was like the first big tour. And it was like 1,500 people a night, you know, to 2,000 people a night type of thing. And bigger in the capitals. And Maestro came out, and Maestro's a lord. He's so much fun, man. So I was DJing for him, and as well as DJing, you know, like the lead up kind of sets. And I was also, you know, kind of tech supporting him as well and stuff. And that was mental. That was good fun. You know what I mean? That's when I first got a vibe of, I got to touch all base around Australia. I understood touring. I understood what it takes, what it's all about. And then from there on, I was doing all the festivals with the Hoods, and then Oars started doing obviously the Hangover stuff at 08, 09, 010. Then Oars got on the festival route, and we were doing heaps of festivals. So it was like that period of 06 to 12 or so was just like mental, real busy.
And then, so what are some of the fondest memories, I guess?
For me?
Yeah.
Clipsal 500 here in Adelaide with Oars and Hoods or whatever.
What year would that have been?
10, I reckon. 10 or 11. No, 10. because it was Hangover, I reckon. It would have been 10, I think. That was pretty epic. Home bake as well with the Oars, playing home bake with them. The entertainment centre gig with the Hoods, it was like mental. It was 8,000 people. I remember walking on stage and DJing. It was just like, and it's like the whole entertainment centre under your needle. You know what I mean? You just cut, and it's like, and you're like, oh my god, I got so much power. And that I'd done a lot of gigs before then, and I was pretty good with handling my nerves, but I was fucking shitting myself that day. I was really nervous. When I hit the stage, I was really nervous. I didn't want to fuck it up. Yeah.
Now, can you recall any like funny stories that you remember with the Hoods being on tour?
Tons. Shit. Ones that are repeatable. Not off by hand. Nah, I can't think of anything right off the top, man, that springs to mind. It's been out of my head for quite some time now, man.
Damn.
You waiting for the juice.
I'm like, you gotta get. I remember because when I asked Plutonic Lab, he said one about like debris throwing up in his shoe at the airport. Like he couldn't make it to the toilet and he didn't want to yak on the floor, so he was just sitting there with his head like in his Nike sneaker.
Yeah, there would have been one. I think I've still got a video on my phone. I'm not going to play it. There was quite a lot of heavy drinking after a lot of gigs, right? And we'd all have, hotel suites or whatever like that. I think it was even in London or something. I can't even remember now. It was after a fucking huge bender. And Baz had woken up in the wrong room. I think it was in my room or something like that. And his room was all the way down the other end of the hall or some shit like that. And he was fucking shirtless pretty much. And he had to he was in his jocks. And he just fucking casually just strolled out of this, and I'm sitting here filming. He's just strolling through the hotel in his jocks. Walks down to his room. I'm pretty sure he was still drunk. I got the video on my phone. It's pretty funny, man. That's only a minor thing, though. That wasn't anything. Yeah, but there was a lot of partying, a lot of good times, man. A lot of good times.
And I can imagine, like, was it crazy? Just seeing people that you've known for such a long time get reacted to by fans like absolute superstars.
Yeah, I know these people pretty well, and you know what I mean. And although now they're starting to become more and more foreign because I haven't really spoken to any of them for the last 5 years or 4 years now. So you know what I mean. So obviously now they're pretty much strangers to me as much as I know them. They're strangers. But yeah, totally, dude, without a doubt.
Do you recall any specific like fan reaction moments where you saw some like, wow, that fan's like,
Oh, Matt dealt with it really well. I mean, like I remember seeing that always at the airports or something like that. Some kids would be literally flipping out. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And he always handled it pretty well, because he was always the focal point. So they'd come to him first. You know what I mean? It'd be like straight to stuff. And he would be pretty good about handling all of that shit. You know what I mean? In terms of always saying hi to giving him the time of day and that type of thing. No great crazy things. Some people would do some stupid things like I I always found those fans that make t-shirts and stuff. I remember we did an Oars gig. I think it was was it Armadale or something? God knows. Fucking in the middle of nowhere. And we're at this pub in Armadale, and there's like 300 or 400 people at this pub or whatever. And there's a group of chicks, I think it was like 3 or 4 girls, and they'd made Funkoars tops, what's your malfunction tops. That was pretty funny. We didn't know how to handle that. We're like, are you for real? You made tops for us? For real? And they were so excited to meet Hans and to get a signature. I'm like, you do realise this is Hans, you know what I mean? Or me, you know what I mean? You never class yourself like that. You just go, sure, we'll sign your top, no worries. And you were here for us. Are you green in the head or what? What's going on? Yeah, no, it was kind of good times, but also, yeah, it was odd sometimes. Yeah.
Now, I guess from where you were sitting, would you agree? Because I've heard that when it came to the hoods, Suffer was kind of like the RZA in the terms of that he was the dude with the master plan, and
everything goes towards what Suff says.
Mm.
Even to this day, I'm pretty sure. You know, he's the shot caller, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Because I heard he had like a 10-year plan or some shit. Like he really took the shit seriously from the door before there was even an industry for local rap, and really believed in it and pushed it and made sure that, you know, any money that was made was reinvested into the band. And
they're smart, man. Yeah, they're smart with and they understand exactly what they're doing. You know what I mean? They're doing it for a reason, and they're doing it exactly for that. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's why they've succeeded to the nth degree. You know what I mean? It's not only their music. Obviously, they're very talented and they're good at what they do, but it's also the way that they treat themselves and the way that they professionally act. Simple as that.
I guess in terms of Funkoars gigs, my most memorable one was the DVD launch at HQ.
Yeah, it was pretty loose.
Yeah, that one, and when the Oars sold out Thebby.
Yeah.
I guess for you, you know, you guys did a lot of shows.
For sure, man.
And why? Just because it was packed?
Yeah, they're the biggest, you know, like obviously those are the biggest things. And the HQ gigs weren't as big as Thebby in terms of numbers, but they were more vibe. They were tightly packed and things like that. So that, and when you're doing a DVD kind of launch, it's like a bit of a different thing, you know what I mean? They were good times. They were the peak of the gigs. You know, I think through that 2009, 2010 era is where the peak of the gigs were, you know what I mean? In terms of the best stage shows and the most, you know, maybe not as polished. Sometimes we're, you know, play better sometimes. But after like a whole tour, you do like 30 shows or whatever. That 30th show, I think Groove in the Mood gigs as well. We did a Groove in the Mood tour. We did the final one over in Perth. That was a rip snorter. I think Draft and P got up on stage as well, and because it was the end of the kind of tour and it was like big festival crowds that just, you know, they'd just jump, and that was a rip snorter of a gig. That was a really good one.
Now, Funkoars, memorable moments, funny stories on tour, in studio. Because I know that everyone thinks of the Oars as the dudes who were just loose and party, and imagine that off stage, you guys were probably more raucous than you were on stage.
Yeah, some fucked up shit went down.
Anything that you can sort of shed a bit of light on without?
Nah, I'm not going to delve into any of those stories, man. they're going to die as legends.
I heard some funny shit about a fire extinguisher. And
that one. I wasn't actually on tour with that at that stage with them. I was with Hoods, and I think it was Fuad's on tour and whatever. And Hans was trying to sleep or whatever, and Fuad let off a fire extinguisher underneath the door of the hotel to try and wake him up or some shit, and fucking coated the whole room in white. It was just yeah. There was some early time. There was some very interesting gigs. You know, there's I think it was at the Hotel Crown or whatever. Like, this would have been Terminal 9 gig or something like. No, Fresh Produce Festival. It was Brand and Flagrant put on a gig. This is back in Who's Your Stepdaddy days. They paid us to come over to Melbourne, and we did a show in Melbourne, and we didn't have any money. Seti's mum paid for us to stay at this 5-star hotel. It was like the Crown or something in Melbourne, and we fucked that place up. We drank so much booze, and we went downstairs. I think we stole every single fucking cushion out of the lobby that we could on every single chair in the lobby and took it up to our room, and our room was just cushions. Just the whole room was cushions, and they were so polite. They'd be, can we have our cushions back, please? And we were drunk. Yeah, you'll get them. You know, we're going to take them back. Yeah, could we really have our cushions back? That's as far as I can remember. It might have been a bit different than that. I was pretty hazy. We were real drunk that weekend. Real drunk.
Now, a gig that I was not at, that I know that you were at was the Sharky's Pool Hall gig.
Yeah.
Now, I
Sure.
mean, fill us in because I've heard like a couple different versions from a couple different cats.
I'm a bit murky with it, to be honest, in terms of exact.
But you were on the turntables that night.
Yeah, I was literally DJing that night. So it was due to be, I can't remember the first act that was due on. It was the most unorganised gig ever. I can't remember who actually put the gig on.
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
Was it LC dudes? Wasn't it Brad Strutt and that?
Yeah, so LC were doing the gig, but I don't know if they put the gig on.
No. I don't think it was. It was someone else putting the gig on. I can't remember the promoter's name. I can't remember the promoter. It was pretty shambles gig, you know. So I'm getting there. There's no microphones. It was a pigsty of fucking cables everywhere. The decks had kind of half set up and skipping and not working. And so I'm sitting there trying to sort stuff out, you know what I mean? Like trying to plug stuff in and play some music or whatever. Got the decks going or whatever. And I'm playing some tunes or whatever. I remember Snare being there. I remember playing some records or whatever, and then some guy started over the pool hall or whatever was there's beef going on, some aggro was going on or whatever. Some guy got smashed basically, or some guy smashed a fucking pool stick or whatever like that. I was thinking, nothing much of it, you know what I mean? Like, just keep playing, and then seeing his hand in the air, you know what I mean, and just fired off a couple of shots or whatever. As far as I can remember, he was like, I remember seeing the gun in the air and he was holding it, just waving it around, some kid, whatever, and I'm fucking ducking down behind the decks, and I'm just like, I didn't get any seriousness of it, you know what I mean? Like, it was all over before you knew, and he was out of there and he'd legged it, you know, obviously he was pissed off, and it was like, turn the music down. And Snare was sitting there, I think, pretty much next to me or whatever, and we're just hiding behind the decks. What the fuck do we do now? This is a fucking Sharkies, man. I'm getting my shit and I'm getting out of here. So, yeah, I think it was within half an hour I fucking got the fuck out. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And that shit was like on the news.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I didn't even think I realised what had happened. Like, it was a shot fired until after I was told.
Okay.
Like, I didn't really get it. I was just like, oh, what the fuck was that all about? You know, no, he fired fucking shot and whatever. Oh, shit. All right. And I bugged out before I didn't give a statement or anything. I just fucking got my records and just dumped them in the car and drove off. And fucking, you know what I mean? I got the hell out of there. Fuck that.
Yeah, man, as you should.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting gig, man. It was a pretty interesting gig. I think I was texting someone. I was texting because half the cats weren't there yet. So I was texting them going, don't fucking roll, don't roll, man. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck's going on? Don't come down here, man. Don't come down here.
Yeah, I think from memory, when I spoke to Simplex about it, he remembers getting text from someone saying, oi, man, this shit just popped off. Don't come down there. Yeah. But I think maybe he said his sister or someone close was down there. So they just went straight down.
Yes.
And then Favo's just everywhere with the cherries flaring up and shit. Yep. Some dudes ended up getting caught or, getting in trouble for it.
Yeah, I don't know who it was. It was a young cat. I can't remember now. It's hazy days, man. That
was a long time ago, man. That'd be like 15, 16 years ago.
There was a lot of beef and a lot of gigs back then. Now, the violence and hip-hop was a bad thing that went with the gigs. Like even the Oz release at the German bar or whatever.
The German club.
The German club. After that, with the gig went fine, you know what I mean? But afterwards, there was biffo out the front and some head got cracked open or whatever, and then the cops got caught, and then suddenly we got tagged with that. And so then promoters around town know the Oz and violence, you know what I mean? And we got tagged, the Hoods got tagged with violence. Everyone, PJ shows got tagged with violence. So basically it was very hard for us to get gigs or to get promoters venues to let us in because there was a lot of violence attached with hip-hop, whether it was true or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just, it went with it. So.
Yeah, I actually know the dude who had his head.
Yeah, that gig. Yeah, right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
He was like one of my closest, if not my closest homeboy. It was his younger brother.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was some fucked up shit, man.
Yeah, see, I didn't even know what happened then. That was after the gig, wasn't it? It was out the front or something?
Yeah, I think it wasn't even actually out the front of the venue. From memory, the gig kind of spilled over to what's that little room just there? What's it called? Fuck, it's right next to the car park, Rhino Room.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out 5-0.
Yeah, right.
Were the ones that.
Oh, fuck off! No way.
Yeah, and he was bleeding internally, so they had to rush him to the hospital and then cut his head open to release the blood because it was creating too much pressure under his skull. And like, I just remember
so it's
like,
5-0 that cracked him. Assholes.
Yeah, and like, yeah, it all got pretty hectic, man. And like, I remember seeing the.
See, we didn't hear about that. All we got, it was basically at the end of the night. I got news from Kirk basically saying there's been fucking violence and it's been attached to the gig. And the next day, it all got attached to Orr's gig. You know what I mean? It was
that was fucked, man. You know the stitching on a baseball? That's like what his head looked like, man. It was just fucked. And then when we heard.
See, that comes home pretty serious, doesn't it? Man?
Yeah, man. When we heard what happened and who was behind it and shit, we were just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Are you for real? And then obviously trying to resolve it, you know how that can go, didn't really end up getting anywhere.
You won't get it.
Exactly. And it was just a fucked up situation that he just couldn't do anything about.
That's unfortunate.
And we just sort of had to watch.
Sitting by the sidelines as such and watch this go down.
It's just fucked, man. You actually watched the dude change as a person.
Yeah, wow.
For the better, though.
Yeah.
It's almost like one of them things where I think maybe he realised, like, fuck, man, it can just all end tomorrow.
Yeah. He realised how quickly things could actually change.
He became a bit more social and so, you know.
He could have gone the other way, though, as well. You know, he can turn some cat inward as well, and you can imagine what it can do to people, man.
Yeah, it was fucked. I actually completely forgot about that until
yeah, wow, man. Sorry to bring that up for you, man.
I asked the question.
Yeah.
Back in the day, there was a gig, like Madcap was putting on a lot of gigs. And like he got smacked out at one of his own gigs.
I was DJing at the time there as well.
And did you see what happened or know what the whole thing behind that was?
Not entirely, no. Madcap kind of kept it pretty tight as well. We had some beef with a few riders and stuff like that as well. And, you know, he'd been running his mouth, I think. And, he basically got cleaned up one night. You know what I mean? Like he was on the balcony. It was like the old comedy club, like near Jive. It was before Jive became Jive.
Yeah, okay.
It was some other gig. No, I can't remember what it was called. I was on stage at the time, spinning records or whatever, and yeah, he got fucking jumped, man, and they fucking put him in hospital, man. They fucking got shit laid out of him, and he to the point where he bailed. That was it for him for the hip hop. He just said, "Fuck it, I'm not putting on gigs and not doing nothing," and he just disappeared for years after that.
And then he briefly re-emerged like a few years later.
Yeah, now he's OS now.
Yeah.
I think he's obviously got paid to do some software stuff because he's a bit of a software engineer or something like that. He's over, I think, in Kuala Lumpur or something. I'm not quite sure where he is now.
Philippines, I think.
Yeah, right. I know he's DJing still. I still see him popping up on the Facebook. I think he's having a ball.
How funny are his pictures?
Yeah,
man.
I know. Yeah.
Madcap, if you're watching this, shout outs to your fucking Facebook game, man.
Yeah, man. I got a lot of history with Madcap, man. He was the sole reason why I got into it. Really, at the end of the day, it was him, his influence, man. So props to him, man.
Yeah, because he did a lot for hip hop.
Dude, he was and he was an incredible DJ too, man. He was dope as, man. His cuts and everything. I was like, oh, fucking only, you know. And his depth of record knowledge as well was pretty good, man. You know, so he'd know his breaks and he knew his shit, you know.
And he was copping a lot of that shit as it was coming from the States and then just putting it straight on radio here, huh?
Yeah, and that was a good thing back then as well. We were breaking the records, you know what I mean? It's not like nowadays. So like the records would come and they'd hit central stations. Basically, I'd have first dibs on most of them, you know what I mean? I'd come into centrals and he'd have a stack of records maybe that thick for me. Like, I've just put all these aside for you, just have a listen to these. And this is the time when Raucous was popping off, and you know what I mean? I was like, like, you can't think about it, you know, the first time you picked up all these records, you're giving them a shot, and you know they're classics now. But you know what I mean? You put them on the record, and you're just like, listen, and I'd walk out there with a wad And this is like 2 or 3 times a week. I don't know how much money I dropped in that store, man. You know, it was quite amazing how much money I spent in there. I don't even know how I got that much money. So, and we would then go and play them on out in the clubs or on radio, and no one had heard them yet. So we were breaking these records. We got a chance to we're pushing the records that we want everyone to hear and to like, and you know what I mean? Whereas totally different nowadays. You can't do that.
No.
Everyone's heard it at the same time.
Culture Kings won.
Yep.
In Adelaide.
Yep.
Now, that was a gig that I remember I could have gone to, and I don't remember why I didn't. Maybe money, or I had some other shit on.
Proscenium, I think.
And I didn't make it, but I heard that was a cracker.
That was a cracker. That was a real cracker, because that was the first time that big crowds had rolled out, very similar crowds to the international crowd. You know, these are the same people that would roll to every gig type of thing. You kind of knew the crowd, you know what I'm saying? And the same kind of crowd rolled to an Australian gig, you know what I mean? And it wasn't just them putting up with who's on stage. It was vibing off of what was on stage. That was an incredible gig, man. Yeah, I think it was a Proscenium, I'm pretty sure. And that was the time when I remember Night the Heavens Cried or whatever. Simo and that dropped that track or whatever, and Jody got up and sung that or whatever, and that was fucking one of the moments of the night, that particular track. Everyone just was like fucking blown away.
Yeah, wow.
That was full on time, and that was the first time I heard that track live as such. It was just that was sick. It wasn't. No one was prepared for it, you know.
Yeah.
That was a highlight. That track on that night, man.
Yeah, shout outs to Terra Firma, man. Like they were really doing their thing at one point.
Oh yeah, dude. They killed it that night. They killed it that night. They had one of the best sets.
The lesson. 927. Oh yeah.